Hi, so I'm going to provide a summary of the 6 individuals' substance abuse journeys first. So I'll start with Sean. His mother had him at 13. He doesn't know his father. He ran away for 6 months when he was 12 and lived on the streets. He started drinking at 12 and smoking at 14, and then began to use hard drugs consistently at 17. He was put on oxy after pulling his back from working on a roof. And then his oxy withdrawals symptoms got so bad that he started using heroin. He bought him off his boss's wife. And the reason it was so hard to find heroin because after 2017, it was a lot harder to get opioids. So a lot of users switched over to heroin because it was easier to acquire. I also learned from the video that pharmaceutical companies in the 90s reassured medical companies that patients would not become addicted to the opioids, but obviously this was wrong. And I think for question number 2, this was the biggest lesson that we learned from this documentary was that it was not safe to use for these patients, and it was not safe to be prescribed at these high rates. Also from the video, I learned that quickly things can become, after 5 days, you can get addicted to opioids and become dependent on it. So this is also a big lesson. Sean ended up getting clean and wanted to help others struggling with addiction, which I think is great because people who have been through it are usually the better advocates for those who are going through it. Next, we have Ken. He grew up with a pretty dysfunctional family, always moving houses, moving schools, which we see a lot with most users. They didn't have a really stable childhood. He started smoking weed at the ripe age of 8. I'm not sure what grade that is, but that's pretty young. He started shooting up heroin at 12. His addiction started with pain pills. He was prescribed oxy or hydrocodone 3 times a day, 90 a month, because of some nerve damage in his left shoulder. He took these pills for 15 years and began to build a tolerance. And then it was eventually hard to get these drugs because in 2017, many users started switching over to heroin because it was harder to get opioids. He got clean and started to feel much better and much more clear-minded. Next, we have Tristan. She is a single mother, and her mother had a lot of mental health issues, so she didn't grow up in the best environment. She also attended 13 different schools growing up, so again, not a very stable childhood. Her boyfriend at the time suggested opioids because she wasn't feeling well. She eventually got clean and then became closer to her friends and family, which led to an overall better quality of life, which is good for Tristan. Next, we have Ethan. His parents were divorced, and he had a very stressful childhood, he explained. His family very much relied on him for emotional support. He was just a very stressed person and relied on opioids for most of his stress to escape reality. He said that the withdrawal symptoms were also too strong, so then he started using heroin. It was very hard for him to keep a job. He eventually got clean and made great friends, got into sports, and then instead of being addicted to drugs, he was addicted to being active, which I think is a great replacement than drugs. Next, we have Levi. He had a great childhood, loving parents, spoiled, lots of friends. He said he did well in school. He played sports. He got his wisdom teeth removed at 17 and got put on oxy. He really liked oxy a little too much to where he started becoming dependent on it, bringing it to school, giving it to his friends. He ended up dropping out. he had a bad breakup and started heavily using heroin. It's really sad because he was on the dean's list the semester before, and I think this just shows, this is also another lesson we can learn, that users aren't always, like, it's very much able to be hidden. These people all did a very good job at hiding it at first. They had normal lives, most of them. They had jobs, good money, kids, family, and it can change really quickly due to drug use. He eventually got clean, went to rehab. After he went to jail, he had 5 overdoses, which was like his breaking point. He wanted to change his life around, and overall, he's a much happier person with a happier life. Jana had a normal childhood. She has a good life. Both parents were depressed, unfortunately, and now her brother and sister are both on drugs and alcohol. Her dad died when she was 13. She began to be very depressed after this and smoke and drank to fill the void. She was able to also hide her addiction at first from friends and family and coworkers, but it just got to a point where she needed help. So she got clean and she feels much better. She described herself as confident, peaceful, and better family relationships. So all of these individuals are great. They have great stories, and I think it's important to give them credit. And I also think that pharmaceutical companies should have done a lot more research on this drug. I think that's a huge lesson we should have learned. And I think overall, it's not necessarily these people's faults that they became addicted. I think the healthcare system honestly failed some of them. That's just my personal opinion. So overall, they're all clean now and living a great life. So yeah, that's all.